That's all we need.
Hello and welcome to another edition of the Tigers Down Under. I'm your host, Alex, and with me today I have Dan. How are you, Dan?
Yeah, I'm pretty good.
And we've also got Brad. How are you, Brad?
Great, thanks, Mo.
Yeah, first episode of the season. I'll get your thoughts first of all. We'll go overall for the season. Probably a bit of a loaded question there, but how are you finding City this year?
I think probably if you dial it back, I don't know, 9 out of the last 11 or 12 seasons, we're at the same sort of point of discussion at Christmas. We're bemoaning a lack of squad, lack of pre-season, or lack of management security, whatever you want to call it. There always seems to be some sort of, I don't know, thorn in our side either around November or December, and then the window's going to fix everything.
Yeah, we'll talk. We've got the Oxford and the West Brom games to review, and then we will definitely be talking about Ajun's comments, where once again the January window has been brought out as the saviour to all of our problems, that we'll fix all these issues that we have in our squad in the January window and see some improvement. But yes, it does seem like Dan was just talking off air before we started recording, looking back at previous managerial appointments from Ajun, and you look at Shotter's record. And funnily enough, I think was it Luton? I think we were playing the day that Shotter did actually get sacked, where Andy Dawson took charge right after an international break. So perhaps history will repeat itself, and we'll see a very, very late managerial decision made, but probably less likely than likely. But look, we'll start off with that Oxford game, which does feel like an absolute eternity ago now, which was a really disappointing 1-0 loss. And I might start with you, Dan, on this one. It does feel like it fits into that sort of category along with that Portsmouth game, where we had a lot of chances in that first half, really sort of tried to huff and puff, but just couldn't find the back of the net. You sort of were talking before about Omer's chance in particular, but Oxford just catching us on the break and just showing the frailties in the City team at the moment.
Yeah, look, it's a familiar story, unfortunately. It's probably the best start to a game we've had in a little while. I think we're really in control and on the front foot throughout that first half, and we created a lot of really positive chances. There was lots of good forward ball movement, but sort of as you said, like just a lack of quality. And then realistically, we probably should have gone in at least 1-0 up at half time, and probably a couple with the domination we had. And as we've seen now a few time and time again, pretty much, that teams have already figured out Walter's system, and they just have to sit and wait for those moments that we overcommit and then hit us on the counter. And that's where we're weak, and that's what Oxford did in the second half a few times where they, once, like there was a time where I think for the goal, Coyle had overcommitted, and they put the big switch onto his side and then crossed it to the back post to Reves to tap it in. But I just think it's, I don't know, it's just frustrating. Like there were some good performances, but at the end of the day, we walked away with zero points in a game that we should have taken 3 from.
Yeah, and Brad, like Dan was saying there, I guess with the inability to finish chances, Balumi hit the post as well, and the Omer chance. It's a real concern with this squad at the moment, I guess, especially now with the news that Balumi's out with the ACL, that our creativity, our attacking options are really sort of limited as it stands.
Yeah, and I think to echo Dan's comment, Walter's obviously got this style that's attacking, yet whether it be injuries or not, we clearly don't have the full squad to be able to implement it. Yes, there's injuries. We know one thing in this league is you're going to play a lot of games and midweeks and back-to-backs and these things, so your squad should actually have more attacking depth than probably what we're seeing at the moment. And probably the issue there is, we sacked the previous manager to be more attacking, and yet our goals conceded and goals for would say the opposite.
It would be interesting, actually. I haven't looked at the numbers, but we must have scored less goals to this point of the season than we had last season under a senior, which, as you say, is a bit ironic given the motivations behind the managerial change.
Yeah, well, I think we're not even on track, are we? Because I think did we score about 70 for the year last year?
So that's the remarkable thing. I think we scored our third most goals in the championship season ever. I think we got 68. 69 was our total under Bruce in 15-16, and then I think our highest was under Slutsky, ironically, which was, mid-table anonymity at the end of that season. But 68, yeah, it wasn't a bad tally at all.
Yeah.
I think we.
I think you made it.
Oh, you go, Brad.
Sorry, you go, yeah.
Okay, I was just saying. I think we were talking about it maybe the last time I was on that. In that season, we finished 7th, and there were only 5 teams or something that scored more goals than us, and that was apparently sackable form. And now now, like as Brad's saying, like we've got 16 goals for, 20 against after 15 games, so we're scoring just over a goal a game, and that's all thanks to the 3 wins. Because that XG's looking pretty low most games. It's got to be in the 0.0s, I'd say, starting most games for expected goals from us. I think the defense, I think the balance in terms of like goals for and goals against is probably a bit tighter than what it was under Rosenia last season. I think it felt like there were games where we scored a lot and there were games where we conceded a lot, but I think generally we are tighter defensively, but we're not like, which is again ironic that like for the attacking play we're not getting anywhere near as many goals as we need. But even 15, in saying 15 that, games and we're 19th, and what are we? We're a point or 1 win above Portsmouth in 23rd.
Yeah. But I mean, and even in saying that, I mean, we've only got the 1 clean sheet for the season, and I was actually going to raise Volta's comments in an interview he did last week with Baz from the Daily Mail, where he was saying he was asked the question if he was concerned about our lack of clean sheets and any sort of need to focus on that. And his response was to essentially be unconcerned and to say, well, if they're going to score 1, we'll score 2. If they score 2, we'll score 3. And to your point around our goals scored being just over 1 goal a game, you sort of have to question, where is this supposed, high scoring, all attacking sort of prowess coming from?
Certainly not from anyone in our squad. Yeah. I wish I had a good answer for you, but look, it's just very frustrating. Unless Pedro or Bursto or Bedia suddenly finds their scoring boots and goes on a run, but otherwise I just don't really know. What's our top scorer? Is it 3?
I think it's a lot of people on 2 goals.
And then, so I was going to say Simons is on 2.
Simons is on 2. Ballumi's on 2. Pedro's on 2. Bedia's on 2.
It's just it's not great reading. I guess the frustrating thing is as well. I'm sort of jumping ahead a little bit, but so we've got those 2 massive injuries. And you go, okay, well, now we don't really have the depth in those wide positions to play that way. Surely we have to adapt the system somewhat. I honestly thought, that we might then switch to 2 up top to be able to play, Bursto and Pedro or something like that. But no, we've decided we're sticking with that. We're going to play a striker as a winger and continue all this sort of stuff. The stuff that bugged us at times last year when we had, we didn't have the personnel. Well, why can't we change things up and make it so that, work with what we've got and play the players that we've got available to their strengths? But it doesn't look like that's going to happen. Although we do have Longman and Cynic back, so who knows?
Yeah, and look, we'll get to the West Brom game in a second where Longman did make his return and I didn't think looked too bad. But on the goal in this game, and Brad, I'll ask you this one, in terms of Giles has, been in and out of the side, finally gets a reprieve and comes in for the Oxford game, doesn't seem to put in the greatest of shifts in terms of tracking back because it's his man who ends up scoring the goal. He lost the ball sort of around halfway and doesn't really make that effort to get back. for someone that we've reportedly paid £3 to £4 million for in the summer, you've got to be pretty concerned about how he's performed so far this season.
Well, you're right. It's almost like he's not fit. I mean, the way he moved he was nowhere near at full stretch, whether that's mental or physical, I don't know. Probably the thing that's probably highlighted to me, just going back to what Dan was saying before about this attacking style and the squad, it probably shows you how important some of the players that aren't with us anymore were last year, even if slightly, well, technically. Like I use Greaves as an example, great centre half, but he played and made those runs down that left-hand side, which became that attacking drive, whereas it's almost like maybe that the method or the message from the manager is to Giles anyway, that you are, you're a left wing back and you've got to attack first and defend second. That was the mentality for sure. And to me, that's part of the problem. It's all right if you've got two great centre halves and they're winning everything in the air and we look brilliant. But if we're going to have holes at the back, like you said, Alex, it makes it pretty easy for the other manager how to line it up.
Yeah, definitely. So look, it's an interesting one to see if because he obviously then lost his place for the West Ham game. It's interesting to see what we sort of talk about the January window as potentially solving issues in terms of incomings, but whether we do, I mean, he was, Giles was linked pretty heavily to Middlesbrough in the summer, despite having only just joined us permanently. It'll be interesting to see if that move, ends up eventuating, unfortunately, probably for a snip of what we ended up paying for him.
Definitely.
Well, look, we might do the votes for this game and we'll move on to the West Brom game. So I might start with you, Dan, for this one.
Even though I gave him a big gobful before we got on air about missing that one-on-one and he should have done better. I've got 3 points to Amur. I got 2 points to Coyle for, again, and then I said just before it was kind of his hole that left us a little exposed for the goal, but I think whipped some really good balls in and did get forward quite well. So 2 points for him and a point for Balumi, who was dangerous again on that right side before
before the injury. Brad, votes for this one.
To not be too repetitive, Coyle, I just rate him. If we had him and 2 or 3 other of the same mould, we wouldn't be in this pickle, even if we haven't got the attacking prowess, because we'd just be defensively a lot better organised and have that grit that we're after. I'd probably give 2 to Balumi, because I actually think, and it'd be interesting to go back and look earlier in the season when we did score multiple goals, but I have a feeling that although he runs well on that right-hand side, I'd like to see him in the middle. I'd like to actually let him go both ways, if you like. It seems to be that he thinks he's on the right-hand side of it, so he plays a bit wider, which could be, we're not privy to it all. But there's a few times when maybe Slater got the ball sort of in the middle a bit wider, that Balumi cut in, and the defenders don't know how to handle it. And it's almost like you've got this, guy who can really confuse the defence, similar to what happened to Giles. That hole, if you like, Balumi's got enough pace and nous to know where to be. I probably don't have a 1, to be honest.
It's one of those games, isn't it? Well, I'll give mine and then see if anyone comes to mind for a 1 vote. But I actually went Panda for the 3. I thought there was the moment it must have been the first half, that right before half time, a ball got whipped in and there was a free man at the back post who really should have scored with that header. So, we sort of sit here talking about how Irma should have scored or Balumi should have scored. Oxford really could have scored from that free header towards the end of the first half. But Panda pulled out a great double, I don't know what you'd call it, double-handed save to keep that out, which was really impressive. I think, remarkable considering his form over pre-season and what we were thinking about him at that point in time, to think that he's now become one of our more important players this season in terms of, the defensive solidity that we do have really comes from Panda, I would say, in terms of keeping some of these score lines down. So I thought that was quite an impressive shift from him. I went Omer for the 2 for similar reasons to you guys. I thought, he had a really strong game considering the fact that he was playing sort of, I guess, predominantly on the left-hand side. Like we've talked previously about how he gets his best when he's in the middle rather than pushed to a wing. But I thought he had a really busy game. You can see his quality when he's playing a side like Oxford, where he is that sort of cut above the other players on the pitch. And it does feel like, he just needs a goal. He just needs to score a goal and get that confidence. And then maybe we'll see, the player that we thought we were signing in January. But to date, it just isn't clicking for him quite yet. And then I went Bellumi for the 1 vote. Again, similar to you guys, I thought he had a really productive game, which was good to see. And unfortunate now that he's got that ACL injury, so we won't see him for the rest of the season. But it's frustrating, I guess, because he was one of the few players from the summer that we spent that money on and really seemed to be worth the price paid. So I guess we'll have to see how he recovers heading into the next season, I guess. Okay, well, we'll talk West Brom quickly, and because I don't know if there's a whole lot of extra stuff to talk about with the West Brom game. I guess the only thing I'd say off the back of that Oxford game with the supporter base essentially turning on Volta, saying his football is fucking shit. Don't swear too often on the podcast, but when it's a direct quote, we'll go for it. I think they were saying, are we loud enough for you? After his comments after the Portsmouth game. So there was a real chance for the atmosphere at the MKM to get pretty toxic when West Brom went 2-0 up. So in a lot of ways, I do sort of wonder if us scoring that goal, as meaningless as it was in terms of the result, almost bought Volta time, because if we'd lost 2-0, the atmosphere might have been really ugly and Adrian might have been almost forced to make a change. I don't know. It seems kind of strange to say, but like Dan, I don't know if you didn't end up watching the game, did you, Dan? But you saw the highlights.
No, I just watched the highlights, unfortunately.
Yeah. Brad, did you watch this one live?
I did, yes. Bar about 10 minutes where I had to just go and find something else to do. The second goal went in because I was that frustrated. But, I mean, look, as much as I've bagged the manager or just the overall experience at the moment, there were signs in that game, I know this is going to sound funny, where I can see what he's trying to do. Slater missed one that he'd probably take every day of the week. We had shots in both halves that, but it doesn't get away from the fact that I think it was the second goal of theirs, a free header at the back post. I mean, we're not just talking a free header, we're saying a guy's on his own in the 6-yard box with no one within metres of him. That just sums it up. It's almost like silly schoolboy stuff that we let away. And I would have thought anyway that the manager would say, do you know what, I'm really upset with a few of these mistakes. But instead what we hear is we've been really good for a half. But in the end, if we don't score 3, then they're going to score 2 and we're going to lose. It doesn't matter which way you look at it. And I think probably to answer your point, Alex, I 100% agree. That goal doesn't go in. And whether it was that weekend or not, I think Walter would have been told, listen, you can say you're attacking, but it's another game where we've lost and haven't scored. It's all over. Whereas I think the fact that second half anyway had a bit of attacking, I don't know what the statistics will say, but we could have easily pinched it 3-2. Could have. Didn't deserve it, but could have.
And that's the thing as well, is that second. So West Brom had played on the Thursday night against Burnley. We had the extra day break because we played on the Wednesday against Oxford. And I can't help but think that West Brom got up 2-0 against us. Then they go, okay, game's pretty much done. Hull can't score 3 goals against us or even 2 goals against us. So we've won it now. We can sort of sit back and soak up the pressure. And we did score. We did cause some bit of nerves in that sense. But I'm sure West Brom are basically sitting there just conserving energy. So, yeah, I agree. Like the stats would probably say we had a lot of good chances in that second half, but I almost feel like that was just because West Brom almost just let us. They were there for the taking to a large extent in that second half. Like they didn't offer anything really, and we we showed, and we were saying before the episode, Dan, like it showed that, you know, we get into that final third and we just don't really know what to do. We don't know, like we don't seem well drilled in how to create openings. Against Oxford, I think we did, because I think, you know, the players just had that natural ability that Oxford don't have, so we're able to play through them a lot better. But against a well-organised side like West Brom, it just felt like we didn't really have any idea what to do to score a goal. Dan, what was your take on how it all went down?
Oh, more disappointment, to be honest. Like I've been following City for a while, and to be honest, I can't really think probably of a time where I've been less invested in the team, and or more disappointed with the state of results. Where there's been times like, you know, even last time we got relegated when we got relegated from the Championship to League
I was
One.
just going to bring that up.
But I would say like the quality of the squad now is better than then. And so I think like that makes this more disappointing. Some of the other times that have been real shit, you go, yeah, but okay, so we had, you know, whatever it was, injury crisis or like whatever, or it's like, you know, we're signing, we get to January and we've got to do this, and we sign who's that fella that we always talk about?
Liam Ridgewell.
Yeah, we signed Liam Ridgewell. We you know, do shit like that, and you go, well, we never had a chance in bloody, you know, snowball's chance in hell when you're pulling stuff like that. But like, yes, we've been unlucky so far, but the intent, you know, to start the season, you have Liam Miller, who we know like has quality, and you know, took a bit to get going, but got going, and then unlucky with injury. Balumi, not really a known quantity, but came in and showed quality. You go, they're two good attacking signings with good intent. And I just think, like, you know, you're talking Gustavo Puertas, I think Javier Simons has gone great. You've got Omer, you've got Casey Palmer, who, you know, was at Coventry last season. Like, all of these are all high, like, quality, experienced champion, or not all, sorry, but lots of experienced championship quality players in there. And we're just petering out to nothingness. Like, I will not be surprised. I'll be devastated, but I'll not be surprised if we stick with Walter for the season. That when we get relegated.
Well, that was going to be my question. Like, yeah, do you think if we don't make a change, that's inevitable is maybe too strong a word, but that we're sort of essentially headed for a relegation battle?
I think so. At the moment, we're like, I'm just looking at the form and stuff, and we're like second worst form, equals second worst form. I think only Norwich has worse form, and it's because they've only got two draws in the last 5. It's like, yeah, I just don't know where anything's going to come from. Like, that's
part of me does, like, the very faint optimist in me that is, you know, battling against the 99% of me that's pessimistic about this season does agree with Brad about, you can see what he's trying to do, at least to some extent. Like, I still make the point that I think in the final third we look absolutely clueless a lot of the time, but you do get games where, and like the first half against Oxford, or you know, the first half against Portsmouth, or like there are moments in games where we do look really dominant and we do create chances where I go, okay, like, is it a case that we do just have to be patient and things will click eventually? Or do you get to a point where the players just don't buy into it, and it's like, it doesn't matter if it would work, the players don't buy into it, so it's not going to work?
Well, maybe. I mean, that's, you look at other clubs. I think that's the Manchester United issue. That you know, the didn't buy into what Ten Hag was doing. You know, lots of backroom stuff. Maybe there's some players who have had too much power there, whatever. But like the same sort of where it wasn't working, but they made a call. I just you know, I just don't know where it's going to change. My big fear is that Ajun's going to, you know, he said he's going to stick with Walter and he's going to persist, and we're going to have another 4 or 5 games where we get, you know, maybe a couple of points, and then it's going to be, you know, Christmas time, right before January window, and he's going to go, you know what, I should have pulled the plug before, so I'm going to pull it now, and then we're going to go into January trying to find a manager and players. That's my
Which is
big
what we were
fear.
doing in the summer to an extent. Yeah.
And
And it's ironic because I think Jun was on a podcast maybe a month ago where he was saying United were silly for taking so long to make a decision on Ten Hag. Like, it was clear it wasn't working. They should have pulled the trigger. And it's like, mate, here's your perfect opportunity to practice what you preach. Brad, what's your sense in terms of, I guess, the trajectory for this season? We had those 3 games. We scored 10 goals in 3 games. It looked like everything was clicking. It looked like we were sort of starting to get going, and you go, okay, can see what we're trying to do. Got tonked by Norwich. And look, and this is the sort of thing where I kind of go, you look at games, you look at the form and you go, we're in terrible form. But you look at the individual games and you look at Burnley where we were up 1-0, and if we'd held on there, we've got to win over Burnley. We've got a 0-0 with Sunderland where Bedia hits the post. They get a shepherd from Bobby Madley to go down the other end and score their goal to win 1-0. You look at, Portsmouth, going up 1-0 against them, having other chances to go multiple goals up when Puerta had the chance, and who else had the chance next? But anyway, you look at all these individual games and you go, and Oxford as well, you go, hey, on another, and this is clearly a Jun's argument as well, right? Is that we've got all these chances, we're looking okay. It's easy to say the form line is really poor and the trajectory is obviously us sinking towards a relegation battle. But there's also a case to be made. We've got, and we'll talk about Luton in a second. We've got this opportunity. We've had all these opportunities playing against all these winless teams to turn things around. Brad, do you see it as sort of like a sinking ship, so to speak, or do you think that there's still a case to be made that things can turn?
Oh, look, I think probably your summary there, Alex, about, you can see what he's trying to do. Probably the optimist in me thinks that you only need that to pay off a couple of times and it works. And all of a sudden you've won 2 out of your next 4 and you're back into mid-table and the relegation battle's not as obvious as what it is. The biggest thing that probably concerns me out of all of this, and that's not even including the last 2 or 3 games, is we've only won 3. I think it's 3.
Yeah.
And even that point there, Alex, when you talked about, I think you said we scored 9 or 10 goals in a few games. The Cardiff game was embarrassing for Cardiff. They just looked like they were 11 guys put on a pitch that never trained together, and not so much the skill level, but even their organisation, they were just rubbish. So I think at the moment we say we were lucky to get them at that point. But even then, I believe Cardiff have actually won more games than us.
Yeah.
So the problem I still have with all of this is that we still, we can etch out a draw, but we don't score double goals minimum. And so what you start saying is, okay, so really we need our best front 3 all playing together to be able to win games. And then the problem I've got with that, Alex, which is where the technician in me comes out, is that those games where we were scoring multiple goals, we were playing 3 up top. And since then, and this is just, we're watching on TV, so we can't see it all, but it's just the way it appears. We've played like 3 or 4 different formations since probably not so much the Cardiff game. Who did we play around there that we also beat 2-0?
QPR, Stoke.
QPR, but also Stoke, the Stoke draw.
We beat Stoke. We beat Stoke.
Sorry.
Forgetting who it was, but yeah.
We beat Stoke in the last minute.
Yeah.
Yeah. And if you go back, we were playing 3 up front. And so the problem we've got now is if we even go back to not so much the Oxford game, because I still think we had enough chances to be able to, obviously, I think probably for most of the game, Oxford would still probably admit that we were probably slightly better, but we just couldn't score. But the West Brom game, the lineup itself, it's sort of like we're getting a bit creative with this formation. But like I was saying before, with who should be playing where, Slater seems to move from one side to the other to the middle each week according to the formation. So there's no sort of set, I'm not even saying players because we've got the injuries, but the formation seems to change a lot. And even with Pedro sitting up top on his own, I don't think it works. We're trying to play the ball wide and then bring it in, which as a defender, you're probably happier with that than hitting him with two strikers at the front. And that's when I was talking about Bellamy before, giving him the chance in the middle to actually run at the defenders. We just don't seem to do it.
Well, it's like Burster comes into the team and Burster coming in and playing out wide rather, like to Dan's point, rather than playing him up top with Pedro. The players we've got available, it lends itself more to a 3-5-2 formation where you'd have Longman potentially and Giles as your wing backs, rather than, as you say, sort of you're pushing Burstow and Umur or whoever else out onto wings when they're not really naturally wide players.
No, it's almost like it's a little bit like we've just got to move the magnets around to see what happens. And I still think, I'm not saying for a minute that we've probably got enough to even play three up top. But even your point, Alex, playing two straight away splits those two central defenders and they've got a job each. Whereas I feel at the moment against West Brom, and I think you might have mentioned before, they just seem to sit back and absorb. I mean, Holgate, he's their centre half at West Brom. He's probably, you check his GPS, it's probably the least he's run all year.
Yeah.
Because he was just able to sit back and marshal. He was almost sweeping because it was that easy.
Yeah. And it also begs the question. I mean, Pedro looked absolutely gassed after about 60 minutes as he has in other games, but we didn't bring Badia on until about 2 minutes to go. And you sort of think, we're chasing the game. We've got them on the back foot. They're sitting back. And as we're both saying, you're throwing on another striker in Badia to sit up top and actually cause some problems. Why are you only giving him 2 or 3 minutes to change the game potentially?
That's a good call, mate, because I think Pedro was gassed almost at half time. And to then make no real change until very late in the game, goals aside, I know, and like I said, we still could have scored a couple. There was no doubt that we were still trying to create something, but I wouldn't know, shots versus their shots, but I would be surprised if we had less shots than them.
No, I think we were definitely on top in that second half. I don't know if they really had any chances of note, to be honest. But yeah, I mean, I think Longman came on at around 60 minutes, and that was really our only change until the 85th minute or whatever it was.
I just pulled it up. So for the match, we're 13 shots, 3 on target, and they're 5 shots, 3 on target.
Wow. Yeah.
Which just goes to, goes to the point of our inefficiency, our inability to, create those clear-cut chances, meaningful shots. So,
and it look,
I think a lot of it's where it's coming from. We are moving the ball from side of box most of the time to either a running header or a header, which is easier to defend. But when's the last time we actually ran at a defence and pulled something from the edge of the box or something like that straight on?
And it's exactly like there's no pace to our attack, because any time that we do get to the box to take a shot, there's bodies in front of us blocking the shots, because we're so slow with creating a chance that when the ball eventually falls to an Umur or a Simons or whoever it might be, they're more often than not shooting it into a sea of bodies.
Yeah, look, I just want to. I was really hoping that this season was going to be more Delap than Philogene in the way that we attack and what we were promised. But I think I posted into our chat the other day that I saw a video of Delap running the length of the field on a counter from Ipswich, and I just thought, God, I missed that. I just missed us being direct and someone just going, I'm just taking this and we're going up there and I'm going to take a shot and do something instead of just what we get somewhere and we go, oh, I'm not sure what I should do here, and we just stop and we turn it back and we play it, back to the left back, into the centre back, into Panda, into the centre back, into the right back, and it's just like
it's exactly
slow and tedious.
And that's what we missed for half a season when Delap was out injured, was that ability to break at pace, because you actually created so much space for the attack by being so direct. But hey, look, we'll do votes for this game and then we'll talk quickly on Luton before we sign off. So I'll start with you for this one, Brad, if you had votes for this one.
Look, I actually thought, as much as I was being a bit critical of him playing a bit wide, and I know he probably wasn't the best player, but Slater looked like our best chance of creating something. The problem is it was just from a bit more out wide.
Needs to work on his heading as well.
Well, he does. I mean, I know he'll say his height might be the problem, but he can get up. We've seen it. So I I'm probably a bit biased again because I still actually think, other than one mistake, Coyle was actually pretty good again. And I know I gave him votes in the previous game, but even if we just duplicate Coyle across two central defensive positions and one out wide or something like that, I just have this feeling that, well, West Brom don't score two. They might score one. We just don't look hungry, and that's not being critical of Jones either, because I think, his confidence at half.
I think Hughes has that similar grit to Coyle, that he's willing to throw himself at anything in situations where, like, he probably doesn't even need to, but he's like, I'm going to win that ball. Because there was one, I think, in almost the lead up to the goal that we scored, he's so high and he jumps and wins the header and then plays it to Coyle, who whips it in or something.
It was Hughes who got the ball in for Pedro's goal.
Oh, was it? Oh, yeah.
So, which sort of surprised me, because it's a cracking ball from a centre.
Yeah, sorry, it goes to Coyle and then he plays it back. Yeah. But sorry to interrupt, Brad. I just think
no, that's all right. Look, I do rate. I think it's almost like if you're moving that back four around. There was times last year when you saw Greaves went back to centre half, but you're only as good as your partner. And I think I don't mind Jones or Hughes, but it's sort of like between the two of them, one's really got to boss the other around more. And that second goal summed it up. As a centre half to sort of be standing there watching lollipop headers at the back post, you're just like, well, hang on a minute. It doesn't matter whether it's your player or not. They just don't seem to be as aware as. And look, that comes with time too. This whole squad, you look at the names. I mean, we've thrown a lot of players together, maybe not necessarily in their most desired positions. It does take time, and it's but I suppose the answer to the question is, well, how much time?
And did you have a one vote for this one?
Look, I will give it to Hughes now. You talked about that ball. I've got to give him some credit because really it's an assist in my book. So I'll give it to Hughes.
Fair shout. All right. And Dan, what were your votes?
Look, I've got names, but I didn't watch the game. I only watched the highlights, so it's hard to be the most accurate in this. But in the highlights, Omo was really busy, so I gave 3 points to Omo, who seemed to be involved in lots of nice little interplay. While Brad may give some credit to the assist, I'm going to give some credit to the goal scorer. I'm going to give 2 points to Pedro for a good goal. A bit unlucky to have not nabbed. I think there was another really good chance. He had another header, I think, as well.
Right at the end,
earlier. So, and a point to Coyle, who I think, just nicely involved, but just generally frustrating.
Yeah, I went Hughes for the 3. I thought, the assist for the goal plus his all-round play, I thought he was maybe the strongest of the defence from my perspective. So I thought he had a great game. Pedro, for the goal, cracking header. Definitely. Look, I don't know if it's just, I know he had a pretty bad ankle injury when he was in Italy. I don't know if that's impacting things for him as well, or if it's just a general lack of preseason that's hopefully gradually getting better, because he definitely looked gassed in the second half. Did have a chance towards the end, but he seems the sort of player, if we can get him up to full fitness, he could prove quite an astute signing as a free transfer, but not quite seeing it for a full 90 minutes just yet. And then I gave Longman one vote just as a shout out for him, because first game back for him from injury, got some good balls into the box. It was looking pretty busy and pretty excited to be back out there. I don't know if it's just adrenaline, and we'll see him sort of revert a little bit against Luton, but I thought it was a pretty strong game from him straight off the back of that injury. So good to see him back out there. But we'll talk Luton now. It's third game in a row against a team that's winless in, I think it must be 7 or 8 games for them. Oh, actually, it might not even be that many. I think they've got, I didn't write it down actually. What was their record? Because they did have a win recently against Watford, so they can't be too long without a win. I will just look that up quickly. They do have 1 win in their last 5, so they're not quite as poor as Oxford or West Brom were in terms of winless runs. But, Rob Edwards under a lot of pressure. They lost last time out to Middlesbrough, and I think after the game, Rob Edwards basically said something like, oh, it's been a great 2 years, but things aren't working out. You basically seemed to be expecting that he was going to get the sack or he was going to walk over the international break, but as things stand, he's still there. So it's a bit of a strange situation in that sense. But heading into this one, Brad, I guess, all you can really do is say it's a game against a team below us on the table. If there's ever going to be a chance to turn our form around and start to, as you said, you sort of win 2 of your next 3 or 2 of your next 4, and all of a sudden you're sitting pretty in mid-table. This is a good opportunity to get a win on the board.
Look, it is. And I mean, as much as I can be a bit negative, I think one thing I hope we get to see is that, Luton have got a lot to play for. Not that we don't, but they got belted in their last game. Form guide's not great. But it's actually the chance, I think, and again, me harping on formation, when you mentioned that we should move to a 3-5-2 or even a 4-3-3 like we had against Cardiff, this is the perfect week to do it because Luton will be out and out coming after it. We know how they like to play, and it's always going to backfire every now and then, which is what it did against Middlesbrough. But Middlesbrough will be thereabouts and a pretty well-organised team. We're not, so we need to have a real shootout and back ourselves to, win 3-2 like the manager keeps saying. So I think the key is going to be how we line up. If we play one up at the top, then you can write it off early. We've really got to have that either 3-5-2 or even just throw a 4-3-3 in and say, this is how we're going to go. We're just going to absolutely get that ball down the middle and see what we can do.
Well, and that's where I think, having someone like Longman coming back to fitness, if we can play him as a proper, winger, as he was in the early days for us and actually looking quite promising. Whether Kamara's back to fitness as well. I haven't actually seen the latest on him, whether he's available. I think Alzati as well might be available, I think was one name being available post-international break. So we haven't seen too much of him yet, but he was reasonably promising in his short stint in the side. But Dan, how are you feeling about, I guess, the lineup and the game itself?
Look, I have within me the faintest little glimmer of hope that still resides, and I'm just hoping that if we can get something against Luton, then maybe my hope for the season will be rekindled to some extent, at least a little piece of tinder on there to keep it alive. But a loss here might just about snuff it out completely. I think I don't think Longman's going to be fit enough to start as a winger. That's my big concern. Is we're probably going to play with that 4-3-3, 4-5-1 kind of a formation, and without proper wingers there. If Kamara's not sort of fit, if Longman's probably not really fit to play 90 minutes. Or even 60 minutes, I think that's going to be the biggest problem. I probably would sort of really like to just see even a 4-4-2, with a diamond or something in the midfield, and play someone like Omer or Casey Palmer in behind a Pedro and a Bursto or something like that. But it's not going to happen. But that would be nice, but I don't know. I don't see there being any major shakeups in terms of lineups. I think it'd be much of a muchness. Maybe some rotation through the mids or something, but I think it seems like most of the positions are kind of locked in. There was, I think you sort of talked about Giles before, and I think it's probably been the biggest disappointing signing for me, for as you say, how much we paid. And he was okay last season, but if it was the 3 million or whatever it was that was the fee, he certainly didn't show that much last season for us. And he's certainly not shown anywhere near that this season. So that was the back line is Drama, Hughes, Jones and Coyle. And then at the moment, Pedro's your centre forward. And the midfield is Simons, and then sort of a rotation between Puerta, Slater, Palmer, Omer, like
Mellum
and so
as
many
well,
guys.
who I had almost forgotten about. I think he's back from injury
Oh, I
as well
wish I
now.
could forget about him.
Yeah.
Sorry, what I said about Giles, I take back. Malem is the most disappointing for me. Absolutely useless. Yeah, I don't think there'll be too much change. I think it'll be probably pretty similar to how he lined up against West Brom, because I'm sure Walter saw that as a good game and a good result. But
Well, it does look like Kamara's fit. I was just doing a bit of Googling while you were talking. I think he was almost deemed fit enough to play against West Brom. So I would think that means he should be okay to go in this one. So the silver lining there being that, he was sort of signed where he was sort of favoured to play on the right-hand side, where Balumi was playing so well that Kamara ended up playing on the left. It will be good to see Kamara get a chance on that right-hand side to see what he can do. Like you, I mean, I'm sort of optimistic on this game. I think Luton, the problem is that like Luton are a recently relegated side. They do have a strong squad, Morris, Adebayo up top, Kaminsky in goal. I think they've got Liam Walsh, a former Swansea loanee fame with us. So I don't know if he's quite the same standard as those other players, but they are the sort of squad that on their day could just click and have a really strong performance like they did against Watford a couple of games ago. But all we can do is say that it's another international break where we've had the chance to get fitness into some of the players, get drills and routines and everything else working with most of the squad. And maybe we can get a positive result out of it, and maybe that can kickstart a little bit of a confidence boost and form. And I think it's ballsy of Vision to say that he's not going to sack Volta and sort of stand and fly in the face of a lot of the logic that you see from owners of needing that instant gratification. Like it does sort of fly in the face of Vision himself with Rossini last season, but there is a little part of me that thinks maybe give it another month or two and things will turn around, and we'll sit here thinking, geez, it's a good thing we didn't get to trigger happy, but it starts with this game. I'm gonna, despite saying all of that, I'm gonna say Luton 2-1 against us. I do think we'll probably find the score sheet again, but I think they'll have too much for us. Score prediction from you, Brad?
I'm going to go against the grain, and I'm just going to back a 3-2, and we're going to win.
Right. We'll find out scoring.
I just have this feeling. Yeah, I think that we're not anywhere near what we should be, but after watching some of the highlights of Luton's game, defensively, they just didn't look near like they were near the races. So I'm optimistic that Walter will see the light and he will change the formation a bit and he'll have a real red-hot go and we'll open them up.
Fair enough. And
otherwise, he's gone.
Yeah, okay.
That's what I'm thinking. Yeah.
Well, that's the thing, right? Because if we
goalless loss and he's gone.
Yeah, I think like, if we were to lose this, there's surely a big chance that we'll end the week in the relegation zone, which I think, whilst not the end of the world in terms of the season, it would be a pretty stark warning for a June to sort of, be forced into a bit of action. Like you say, I mean, Cardiff and Luton are sitting below us in the table with more wins than us. If they were to, if Luton beats us, obviously they go above us. If Cardiff was to pick up a win as well, we'd almost definitely be finishing the day in the relegation zone. So,
and that's a really good point, Alex. At the moment, I know we've had the draws go our way versus those teams below us, but we're on track for 9 wins the way this is panning out. And 9 wins means you're relegated.
Yeah.
So there's got to be a couple of big turnarounds.
No, that's it. And then to your point earlier, Brad, I mean, the 3 wins did come in a 3-game window. So you're sort of looking at it as a 12-game winless run effectively this season, with just that sort of blip of good form, which really was good fortune given the timing of those matches. But Dan, what's your thoughts on the score for this one?
I'm tipping a 1-1 draw.
There you go, right in the middle.
Yeah, right in the middle. It seems a bit boring, but I don't know which way it's going to go. But there's the equalizer's coming in like the 85th minute onwards, like a late game killer, or or late game savior. whichever way you want to look at it. But
And look, it's funny that it's still worth the 1 point, but if it's the latter, if it's a game saver, the atmosphere and the mood off the back of it is completely different. So it's funny how those things can go that way. But no, look, thanks for joining me, both of you. It's been good to go. Well, good, maybe not so, maybe not good. Maybe it's a what's the word? Like it's a nice detox to be able to release all of this angst.
It's been pleasant having a nice and robust discussion about City.
Couldn't have put it better myself. So no, thank you both of you. Thanks, Brad.
Thanks, Alex. Thanks, Dan.
And thanks, Dan. Cheers. And thanks everyone for listening in. We'll be back a little bit earlier than this next week. It'll be either a Tuesday morning or Wednesday morning UK release, because we do have a Thursday morning game next week. No, it must be a Wednesday morning game next week, Sydney time. So we'll be back a little bit earlier next week to discuss the result of that Luton game. But until then, come on, City.